So I told my friend, I said, hey, this guy is following me. And my guy, oh, you're paranoid. Nobody's thinking about you. You're not big time like that. So I was like, okay. But the second time I saw him, I said, hey, wait a minute. Something is not right. And I had a weird feeling in my gut about this guy. So I guess an hour had passed and I just brushed it off. But I was coming outside my building and I saw him again. I said, okay, I'm going to go up to this guy and ask him where I know him from. And as I approached him, he said, hey, do you have a lighter? So as I was digging in my pocket, I was going to say, sir, but then all of a sudden, I saw a green flash. It was a bright green flash, and I smelled sulfur. It smelled like burning matches.
That's the most simplest hood trick in the hood. In the hood, when somebody asks you for a quarter, $1, 10 cents, even a penny, you look at them, you step back, you take cautious, or you try to finagle your way out of it, because in the hood, when anybody asks you for a quarter, $1, or even a lighter, you know what that means? They try to rob you, kill you, or kidnap you. Facts.
I remember distinctively the smell of like matches. If you would set a matchbook on fire, um, all of a sudden I looked up and the guy looked at me with a smirk. And he just kind of like evil grin, like I got you. It was just like it was so evil. But I just remember everything moving in slow motion, and I fell back. When I fell backwards, this is where the supernatural part started. This is when my life changed. When I fell backwards, everything went blank, dark. But this kind of darkness is not a darkness that's here on earth. This darkness is alive. It's a gripping darkness. I mean, it was so dark, like I was saying, that you can blindfold yourself, put yourself under the ground, blindfold yourself again, and it still doesn't compare to this type of darkness. It's a spiritual component to the darkness that I was in. But the weirdest part was when I fell backwards, I started instantly falling forward. I was falling down face forward as I fell backwards. That was the weirdest part. That's the spiritual aspect of it. But as I'm falling, I don't even know how to measure it. They say the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. It was faster than that. It was just going. But the further I'm going down, just falling and falling, the more and more I felt like I was getting stripped of everything. I knew I was getting stripped of the things that God gave me that I took for granted, like hope, love, fellowship, patience, everything. The further I was falling down fast, everything was getting stripped from me, and I was getting more and more afraid. But this is a different type of fear. It's not a fear like here on earth. It's a different fear that you have to experience. Like the Lord says, there's a difference between reading and talking, but experience. But there's no other way. I'm gonna try to get close as I can to explain this, because there's a lot of things spiritually that can't be put in words here on this earth, in this dimension, so to speak. But as I'm falling, I'm feeling more and more frightening. I started hearing, the first thing I noticed was laughter around me. As I'm falling, it was like this laughter, and it was like these giggling little but the laugh itself, they were laughing, I felt it. It was a different type of laugh. It was a demonic hatred. Like I just knew whatever was laughing at me hated me more than like with anything you can even describe. But as I'm falling, I hear this laughter. The second thing that caught my attention was this horrible smell. See, people don't realize when you leave the physical body, you still have your five senses. You still have them, but the thing is they're upgraded and modified. They're very more modified. I mean, times a million. Your sight, your hearing, your vision, your touch, everything you still have those things. So this is not a fairy tale where people, been taught that when you die, you just pass away. Everything's completely different. Yeah, it is different, but your senses are highly modified. But I smelled the smell, and the smell, I can even just talking about it right now. So I'm sorry if I pause a little bit, because a lot of this comes back to me, and I still get a little emotional. But the smell alone is so bad, like I can't even describe it. There's nothing you can have a thousand corpses and dead animals and whatever you want to put into the mush. It smells like Febreze compared to what I smell in hell, the way it smells. So as I'm falling, then I noticed a little light, and it was so small, it was a pinpoint of light. And I heard, and as I'm falling, it's getting bigger and bigger. And then that's when it hit me. I knew And I thought it was a fairy tale. I'm not gonna lie. I just thought hell was a fairy tale. I thought it was a place of fantasy. I thought it was a scare tactic used by religions. I knew. I said, I'm going to hell. See,
Religion is a scare tactic. That doesn't mean that hell is not real or heaven is not real, but religion from the beginning, especially in the European world, has been used to control people and to keep them in line. Why do you think the Pope was so important? The Pope is important today, but not as important as he was back in the day. The Pope was somebody who, back in those days, could execute you. The Pope was somebody back in those days that could execute you. The Pope made big decisions. The Pope was more involved in government because they needed the government and religion to control the people.
time doesn't exist over in eternity the way it exists here. So all the time that I'm falling, people say, how would you have time? Time doesn't exist the way you can't even fathom it. Eternity, it has no time. So as I'm falling, I knew this was hell. And then I heard the screams of the people. Yeah, the screams and the yells of the while as I'm falling. And this portal, may I call it the portal, was getting bigger. You can just hear, and I knew it had to be billions, hundreds of millions of billions of people down there. I mean, screaming, and then their screams are gut wrenching. The same way I heard those demonic laughs, I can feel it in my gut and feel it in my soul. Those screams were worse because it was suffering. It was blasphemous things being yelled. Uh, it was just horrible. You know, people begging for one more chance. I mean, the thing is, when you're in the spirit, you can hear 1,000 noises at one time, but you can decipher and know each one, whether they're playing simultaneously or not. You can distinctively know and hear everything. You know, like I said, it's hard to explain, but that's the closest I can get to it. But as I fall and I see this portal, it looked like an old cave, like I'm entering an old cave system. Okay, and then that's when I felt the heat. See, now I'm looking back on it. It probably already was hot when I got closer to it, but I was so shocked and so terrified by everything else, I didn't pay attention to the heat until I actually got into the first portion of the portal. And then that's when the heat hit me on top of everything. It was just a bombardment of everything. And, you know, here on earth, in our physical bodies, we feel things separately, meaning like, you know, our nervous system. So if you get poked in your back, you get punched or something like that, you can feel it just kind of in that spot. But no, there you feel it all simultaneously at one time. Pain, everything. It gripped, it's your whole body because now I'm learning I was in my spirit body. I was so used to being in my physical body, it didn't make any sense to me. But when I felt this heat, it's a different fabric. It's a different fabric of heat. It's not like how you burn your finger here. It's a spiritual component to it because it's a different type of hot. I don't even, I'm trying my best to describe the heat, but the heat is it's beyond. I mean, just say if I wanted to put it on a temperature scale, I would say 12,000 degrees and up. And nothing physical here, especially in the flesh, could withstand that. So, but as I'm falling and I enter this portal and I feel the heat, I'm hearing the yells. It's like it's just overwhelming. And at this time, by the time I got to the bottom, I just knew I was in hell and I knew I was going to hell. But once I passed the portal, all I remember is when I hit the bottom. I didn't feel anything when I first hit. So I'm trying to think, I was asking, was it the Lord that softened the blow when I first hit? But when I fell and I raised my eyes, it felt like I had no strength. I felt like I hadn't eaten for like months. I couldn't breathe. It was horrible. Just a feeling of just nothing. And then, but the only thing that kept coming to my mind was, and I know the Lord did this purposely, was thinking of everything that I took for granted, movement, a drink of water, just to have the ability to move my arms just freely, the ability to breathe, all the things that we take for granted. It was going through my mind. I knew it came from God. I just like and I knew I took it for granted. And there, first thing is I look over. See, it was dark, but I'm trying to, wonder if the Lord was making me be able to see. But the flames itself were emitting so high from these pews, like these vents from the rocks. And that's another thing too. I want to add. I don't want to move too fast, but one thing I do want to add. For some reason, I knew I was still here on Earth. I still knew I wasn't in outer space somewhere. I wasn't under space. I was in a different dimension, but I was still on Earth. I knew that. I knew it's here on Earth. So the Lord is right. Hell is a place on Earth. The scriptures are right. It is here on Earth. It's just a different dimension. So as I'm looking around and I'm just already, but I see when the flames, they come up and then you can see the illumination from the flames. You can see. And the first thing I noticed were these demons, things. They're the most grotesque, smelliest. Hollywood can't even get close to how these things look. They're so deformed. They had legs and twisted arms, but they had a reptilian look, a reptile look to them. And their eyes were glowing yellow. Some of them eyes were red. Some of them were like 13 feet tall. Some of them were this big. They're everywhere. And it's just bugs, there's spiders, there's just everything. But what really caught my attention was these pits everywhere. And this one demon glanced at me and he started laughing. But down in the pits were just people. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just people. But then I thought it was just one pit. As you really look around and the flames illuminate all of the space around, there's, I would say, hundreds of thousands of pits. And then within each pit are thousands of people. Okay. And then around the pits, you have nothing but these grotesque demon reptilian or reptile-like things, making sure they don't crawl out. It was horrible. You have people who look like bone. I would say they look like bones. Some of them were bones, but actually flesh hanging off, which is incomprehensible to some people to even imagine how, but the things that I saw and the tortures that I saw is that you regenerate. So just say if your arm falls off, it'll grow right back so you can get tortured again. It's a place of pure torture, like torture. Hell is it's no relief. There's nothing. But as I'm looking.
My question is, how long was this man dead to remember all of this? That's my question. For you to be so detailed, was he in a coma? Because if you get shot and you out, if he saw what he's telling us that he saw, which is hell, that means you was dead. Once you're dead for a certain amount of time, there's no coming back. Those cells, catabolistically, metabolically, you can't bring those cells back. You can't have somebody dead for 24 hours where they're pale, their blood hasn't been moving in 24 hours, their heart has stopped for 24 hours, everything, the color, they get stiff, rigor mortis, and then they come back and they tell you, oh yeah, this is what hell look like. No such thing. You can't, why you think it's such thing as a CPR? And to pump that heart to get things flowing, keep those cells, keep them cells with blood, nutrients, oxygen, most important. We can't, why you think doing CPR, you can't stop unless they say shock. Even when they say shock, we go until the last minute. Then we step back. Shock the body, we go back. CPR. You can't stop pumping the heart. So for him to see all of this and be so detailed, saw people with bones, with skin hanging off of it, and etc. These tall beings, and which I believe, me personally, I believe that do exist. I believe that hell is a real place. I believe that the soul, what we have from when we're born and we're given birth, it doesn't just go into thin air. I believe it exists somewhere. And space is infinite. You can't ride through space and hit a wall. It's infinite. How can you say the soul is not infinite? The flesh is, but the soul has to go somewhere, has to go to another dimension. And I think that dimension is right here on earth. Just so they could be very close to us, manipulate us, and have us do all these evil doings. So when we go to hell, we don't gotta go too far.
And then this one demon, he was about 8 feet tall. He looked at me and laughed. And then all I remember was these thousands of maggots, worms, and they're like thick. They're thick. They're thick as soda cans. Okay, they're not like regular maggots here in this dimension. They are thick and they're big, and they started to chew at my feet. And then once it was a few of them, when I looked down, it was hundreds of them. They started to make a mound around me up to my knees of these demonic maggots. I don't even know how to explain it. But that was the least of my worries, because I felt getting a hand picked me up from the back of my head, and it flung me, and it flew. And now as I flew, okay, now remember, you have no energy, there's no nothing. Even just when I laid down, I couldn't get back up. But now I'm realizing, in hindsight, that the Lord was with me, because a lot of these demons, they wanted to attack me. They wanted to rip me apart. And I can just feel the hatred that they have for mankind, the hatred that they have for us. It is beyond anything. It is beyond, and you can feel it's ancient, and you can feel it is powerful. It is power in their hate. It is so powerful. Yeah. All right, just 1 second. Okay. Because people don't understand that these demons feed off our depression. They feed off our anxiety. They feed off our aggression. They feed off our hate. They just feed off of us. So that's why they call us in the background. They don't have the power to make us do it, but they have the power to influence situations that make us do these things. And they feed off that. And that's one thing I've learned. The hatred for us, that's why I love all mankind. Because the hatred they have for us, it would make you love all mankind and stick together against these beings. Really. We have, all the divisions that are caused are just an illusion. But yeah, that's one thing. That's what I learned from that. But as I was laying on the ground, I'm sorry, I just had to just reiterate that point. But as I'm laying and I can't get up, and the thing is, in reality, I wasn't breathing, because there's no oxygen down there. I think it was more mental, psychological, because I was so used to being in the physical. So I'm trying to breathe, and I'm realizing, so I'm barely standing up. And that's when I think the Lord showed me it was the whole hell of this section, because hell has sections. I'm going to explain that soon. It has many sections. It was illuminated for me where I can just see everything. And when I tell you, the tortures, wow, I mean, it is beyond the stretch of your imagination. And people say, why would God let that happen to us? Why did God send you there? Why did they blame God? But they never blamed the enemy for anything when they were here on this earth. But one thing that I noticed, when you're in hell and when you're eternally in a spirit body, you can look at a person inside hell and you know why they're there. You instantaneously know, you know why that person is there. I've seen people there for unforgiveness. I've seen people there who thought they were the best in the church, saying, why did you do this to me? I've seen pastors there. I've seen even some preteens in hell. I've seen a lot of people who think they're doing the right thing, but they're no. Like, for example, the first lady who I saw getting tortured individually, not the people in the pits. There were two demons, and they were laughing, these reptile things, and they had her mouth, and they stretched her mouth so far back, like to rip her jaws open, and they were pouring lava down her throat and sticking her throat with spears and just like these old ancient looking rusty daggers, and they were getting a kick, and it was horrible. But then the fact is, she turned the bone, she was breaking up, and then she would rejuvenate, and they would do it all over again and over again and over. And they were taking turns. They were inviting other demonic spirits. They were laughing. They were having fun torturing this lady. And when I looked, and I really knew, this has to be the Lord.
Now, if that is true, that somebody was getting tortured and the lava was getting poured down their throat, and when it's all said and done, they basically rejuvenate. They get their throat back and then the demons do it all over again. If that's true, that means that it's a few people that seen that before. And it has to be some movie directors that heard it from somebody, if it's true. Because you know what? I've seen that in a lot of scary movies. Somebody getting tortured and they rejuvenate and they get tortured again and they rejuvenate. Who haven't seen that in a scary movie?
Lord, I already knew why she was there. She was there because not only was she a gossiper, she was gossiping about people. She got many people life turned because of her tongue, and she was an alcoholic. And I'm starting to, there was a theme in hell I started to notice because people commit a lot of sins on a wide spectrum. But the one that sticks out the most is the one that's going to rectify, that you're going to get inside hell. So let's say, a person who is promiscuous, and that's another one. I'm going to keep it not explicit, but I saw a young lady in hell. There were demons literally taking turns having sex with this woman. And when I say it's not regular sexual intercourse, it was beyond mind. I mean, I can't say too much to describe, but all I can say is that she was very promiscuous when she was here on this earth, and they were torturing her in ways that you can't even imagine. So, yeah, I was just saying the biggest sins that I started noticing that pattern. The biggest sins that you have, because like I said, everybody sins on different spectrums and think it's nothing. It does no, everything counts. Everything counts. And it's not God, our Father, up there taking a list of you. It also says in the Bible that the flesh will testify against itself. So people, that is real. Your flesh testifies against you. Your flesh, you desires. That's why he always tells us to get away from pleasing our own flesh, because we're going to put ourselves there. The Lord cries, the Lord heart aches for us, every one of us that go to hell. He does not want that. He does not want that for us at all. It really tears him apart to see us in that predicament. But just back to the tortures, unfortunately, that was only one section. And I thought, and that's mind blowing. That was only one section with the pits. So I thought that, no. And I think the Lord was with me. I don't know if anybody ever had a dream before where you couldn't see the person's face, but you know somebody was there standing with you. I know the Lord was with me, but I never saw him. But I knew he was the one directing me and protecting me, because these things wanted to eat me and tear me apart. But the second thing I remember is another section of hell. And that's another thing. When you move in hell, there's no really walking around when he's showing you. It's like you instantaneous. It's like teleportation. When I teleported to this other part of hell, okay, I saw these cells, okay, and I grew up in skyscrapers, uptown Chicago. Grew up on the 16th floor, and these things were taller than that. These things had to be 50 stories tall, and there was a row of them, all the way as your eyes can see, looking up. And they are open old bar cells, and there are people in them. There are people in them. Some of them look like skeletons. Some of them were just burned, like to a crisp. And they're cursing God, and they were just very angry to be there. There was no repentance. There was no asking for another chance. Those are the ones who were just very angry at our Lord. They were very angry. Some of them even started looking like almost a reptilian look because of the hatred coming out of them. And also, I noticed some of them been there for thousands of years. See, that's the thing. People don't understand. Time doesn't exist in eternity. It doesn't. The clock stops. And I realized that. I saw people there who were there 2,000 years, 4,000, and you just know the ancientness of it. I saw all different languages. It doesn't discriminate. The devil doesn't discriminate at all. The whole end point is to get you there. That's it. So all of this, while we're messing around with racism, we're messing around with judging others of economic status, which is just an illusion, by the way. It's about spiritual currency. It's an illusion, and it's a trap to get us there. And when I saw those cells, that's when things started to awaken to me. I saw mostly those who were in those cells were people who dabbled in witchcraft, those who dabbled in Santeria, those who dabbled in all kind of tarot cards, those who wanted to know the future and astrology. I just know, like I told you, once you go there, you know. You can just look at a person and you know while they're there. And mostly I saw there was a thing to those people in those cells, and those are the people who worship other gods or the doctrines of demons, is what they call also in the scriptures. And what's so terrifying about that is that here, because I have my brush was sent to the unfortunately growing up, and they promise you everything materialistically, but what they don't tell you is once you worship these, these demons. Now that I know they are, I didn't know that before. They make it seem like they're positive, they're good, they're here to help mankind. The non-principalities, and they give you all the wealth you want. You do these rituals and stuff, but you don't realize you owe them, and what you owe them is beyond this earth. You're gonna have a spot. They have a spot waiting for you. It reminds me of people who say, well, I didn't know the law. I didn't know. But if you go to court, you will still go to jail. Ignorance is not a way out of it, you all. So I'm just telling you, watch what you do. Watch what you confer, because psychics and all of these mediums and things of that nature, of course, they're going to tell you things that are right on purpose, because they call it familiar spirits, which I saw them ascending and descending from hell. But I will get to that too. But just be careful, you all, playing with witchcraft, any astrology, any things of that nature, because they have a place just in hell for you. And all.
So, this is Dominique testimony, a Chicago gang member that committed lots of acts of sins. Of course, he's a gang member. Do you believe him? Do you not believe him? You let me know. But I believe him. There's some things in there I kind of question. As far as how long was he there? How did he know that those people been there for 2,000, 3,000 years? If they was of flesh, they didn't have clothes on. Like, did he know just through like premonition? Because he's in his spirit form, so he just automatically knew. But if they had no clothes on, for example, if they was from the 1800s in China, you would know based on the clothes. If they was samurai, they had no clothes on, so how would you even know? Unless it's a premonition, which is possible. Hell is definitely a real thing. I believe it. I believe that here on earth there are demons that constantly attack us to commit sins. The sins don't necessarily have to do with robbery, murder. Just like he said, gossiping, causing families to break up. Things like that we don't look at as much as acts to be put in hell for. Because we mostly follow the 10 Commandments. But nobody knows it's true. If this guy's testimony is real, which I believe is real, I see the way he talks about it. I'm looking at his eyes, his mannerism. I believe he was there. I believe he was there. The youth nowadays, especially the older people, gotta include them. Not only the youth commit sins, but a lot of people who are in these gangs and they out here just committing the most violent acts. A lot of them, they get caught. A lot of them get street justice and they end up going to hell. A lot of them wind up in prison and freed, and then one day they'll die, then they end up going to hell. I believe that if you commit, and if our society keep committing these acts of violence, there are more people that's going to experience this time and time and time again. So with that said, please listen to this man. Listen to what he has to say.
Um, think about your actions, your day-to-day actions, how you take care of your kids. Are you raising your kids correctly to be good people? I believe that's a sin. If you raise somebody who come from you, whether womb or sperm, if you don't raise them to do right, I think that falls back on you because they are your duty. They are a part of you. They are a creation, yes, from God, that God allowed you to create. Just do good. Just do good. These creatures he talked about who are tall, 50 stories tall. We in mythology there are creatures they talk about who are giants. They're giants. The reptilian look makes sense because there was a time in this world where all animals look reptilian. I believe that the first life, whether land or sea, had a reptilian look to it. I believe not the first organ or not organization, but the first life form, microscopic wise, not reptilian, but I believe when they come to form and come to their true form, they are reptilian. This guy's testimony hit me hard. I listened to it 3 to 4 times, and it's definitely making me think about how I live my life. So please listen to it. Don't be ignorant. Listen. And I think that if you listen, his testimony will probably change your life.